what was your biggest takeaway?
I got a bunch. First of all, shout out to Marcus Freeman. And Brian Kelly left Notre Dame because it's like, can't win a national championship here. And he went to Louisiana and put on a fake accent, and 3 years later his team's playing for a national championship. And so what a wonderful coaching job by him. But my three biggest takeaways, one is this. The playoff is now officially a success.
Agreed.
Notre Dame, not so much what seed they were, but they were number 5 in the final rankings. Under the previous format, their season would have been over 2 weeks in. Lost to Northern Illinois and would have been like, okay, can't dig yourself out of it. And while I do like college football, the stakes on every game are high, I didn't like the idea of you could be a team that is good enough to win the national championship, have one bad game in September, especially transfer portal, so many new guys, so many things, and you can't dig yourself out of it. So makes it a success in my opinion. The second point, or second takeaway watching last night's game, is one of my favorite things about college football is last night's game and the game you're going to watch tonight are going to barely look like the same sport. Because tonight you're going to see there's going to be 5 first-round wide receivers on the field between the two teams, if not more. It's going to be an aerial assault. Last night it was like, man, if we can just occasionally complete a forward pass, I think we're going to have a huge edge.
You know how many Penn State wide receivers caught a pass?
I oddly do. I think it's 0. Yeah, and so
zero.
And by the way, I think Notre Dame can win the championship. Like I know they're going to be a dog no matter who they play, but even though they play such a different style than Ohio State or Texas, I think they can win. And the last one is the negative one. James Franklin ain't got it against these tier teams. And the numbers are undeniable, and he is an excellent coach at program building and getting you in big games. But in those big games, I mean, you can be like, oh, it's hard to beat top 5 teams. It is, and it's hard to beat top 10 teams. But you probably need to be a little bit better than those numbers if you're going to get over the hump.
Coach, before I ask you for your takeaway, do you think that's fair that, I mean, the numbers are pretty bad, but are you putting this on Coach Franklin?
I think when you get to the point where it's 1-15, it starts to be a little bit indicative of your ability in those situations. I was disappointed because I know James a little bit and spent some time with him, and I was excited. They were up 10-0. I thought, okay, he's going to get over this hump, go to the national championship, and then when they lost, and they lost how they lost, it was pretty disappointing. And I wonder if he faces a little bit of like the scrutiny that Tomlin has now, where at some point the school's going to say, okay, do we need to go get someone that can get us past this?
But you put that on him, like the interception. I thought they were going to win the game. I was assuming that was in the going to drive the field, either score and kick a field goal and end it. It's a bad pass. So I understand the defense. We have the defensive numbers after this, Hubs. The defense fell apart, so if you want to put that on him, but I don't put this one.
I think the receivers not having any catches in the game, that's one of those things you get to halftime, you're like, hey, we need to get the receivers involved in the game here. And in fairness to him, I think he does a great job. But again, when you get to numbers like 1-16, right? It's 1-16 now. Then it. Right.
So that's just to answer real quick before Coach goes on his takeaways. I don't put that interception on the coach, but it is just when you have had this many bites at the apple on what you would call a signature defining win, and you just keep coming up short. It's not that dissimilar from Ryan Day's struggles, unique struggles against Michigan, where it's just like, okay, you might be an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 in so many categories that are important to being a coach, but on this specific type of thing, you're just not good at it. And so I don't think Penn State, I think a problem, not to the same level, but my school, Syracuse, was sick of, winning 8, 9, occasionally 10 games with Paul Pasqualoni. It was like, you know what? We're going to do better. And then we won 3 games for a decade. So sometimes you're just kind of stuck. It's like we're really good, but probably not going to be good enough. Now, that was the knock on Jim Harbaugh at Michigan until it wasn't. So maybe you get over it. But
one of the things I loved about last night's game is, and everybody talked about culture. Like after the game, all the Notre Dame guys talked about culture. They talked about the fact that nobody's worried about the draft. Nobody's worried about their stats. that stuff matters. It matters in championship type runs, and we had that in New England during our run. I love the fact that a bunch of kids in that game got a chance to play who hadn't played and then stepped up in big moments. They lost their right guard, they lost their left tackle. Those guys came in, played well. Their kicker, who'd been struggling, he got a chance to win
and
the game.
I thought that kick was, it
that was
looked like that.
insane. That was an insane kick.
How about the backup quarterback comes in at the end of the half and leads them to a field goal? Like, those moments last night were fantastic.
Just one more minute here before we get to Packers-Eagles. Abdul Carter had another sack, so it's 12 on the year for him. A lot of mocks have him 7th to the Jets. CBS has him 6th to the Raiders. NBC has him Panthers at 8.
A lot of people think he could be in the mix for number one.
For number
overall.
one now.
Yeah.
Coach, what was your take on Mr. Carter?
You'd be pretty excited if he ended up on your team. With the pass rushers, though, as you're evaluating them, you got to figure out where they fit in your system. Are they just third down guys? Can they play every down? And our defense, we were 3-4, so it's a little bit different, structure. Could he move to outside linebacker?
Probably. I mean,
something like that. There's a whole, you see the skill set and you see the way that he can affect games, and that's a question of how does he fit in your system.
I just like number 11 Penn State.
Yeah. I mean, LeVar,
it's pretty
Micah,
good.
and by the way, Micah
good.
was a guy who played in college all over the place, and then now in the pros can too, but his best is dedicated pass rusher. One more thing, if I may, just quickly. So often when we talk about NIL, we talk about guys who are going to eventually be pros, who make a ton of money, who then also make a bunch of money in college. Kid like Shedeur, who's going to be a top 5 pick, and it's like, he was rich before he got there. Caleb, who made millions. I have no idea how much money Riley Leonard's made in NIL, but when I think of NIL, he is the exact type of person that I'm glad can benefit from it. Because I remember right when I graduated college, there was one year, the University of Kansas, it's not a school I rooted for, but it was in my area, with Mark Mangino, made an Orange Bowl. Yep. They were really good. Aqib Talib was on that team. Their quarterback is a kid named Todd Reesing, and it was 0% to ever make $1 playing professional football. But for a year, he might have been the most famous person in the state of Kansas, and he couldn't make any money off it. I'm like, man, that might have been the only time in your life you could have made a couple $1,000,000 in a year. So I like the kids that are, no, that's a college quarterback. I know Colin tweeted out he's a right-handed, or said he reminds me of Josh Allen. I'm like, okay, I disagree. I don't think he's a pro. But I think he's an awesome college story that if he can make some money during that time as a big-time celebrity, I think is great.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of guys like that come into pro football, and they've been the best at every level.
Yeah.
Then they get into pro football, and they're just a guy, and then they miss their window to make any real significant amount of money.
Yeah.
Packers-Eagles, Sunday at 4 on Fox. Jalen Hurts was a full go yesterday at practice. And now we know Brew believes in the Packers, but I just saw them lose 3 of the last 5. Do you think Philly is on upset alert against Green Bay?
I don't think they should be. Do I think that Green Bay has the potential to play really well and win the game? I don't. Yeah, I do. I don't think they're overmatched by any stretch, but I think Philly should clearly win this game. They're 8-1 at home. They've essentially coming off a bye. They've got a 2,000-yard rusher. They've got the number 1 or number 2 defense in terms of points allowed. They're healthy. They've got threats on the outside. I mean, they're going into the playoffs with momentum. Green Bay's not going into the playoffs with momentum. Can Green Bay win the game? Yeah, of course. And again, I don't think this is a complete overmatch, but Philly should absolutely win this game.
So I 100% agree with Coach. It's not that Philly is drastically better than Green Bay in any one area. It is simply that they are better than Green Bay in every area.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know what I mean? Like there is not a single unit in this game that I can say conclusively, oh, Green Bay's better. You know what I mean? Green Bay's got a good offensive line. Philly, once again, is one of the best. Green Bay's defense has been really good all year. Philly's defense has been outstanding. Green Bay's got a really good running game. Philly has Saquon Barkley, who, like Coach said, rushed for 2,000 yards. Green Bay's got a nice collection of receivers. Philly might have the second best pair of receivers in the NFL outside of Cincinnati and the best that made the playoffs. Maybe quarterback, Like, you could make a case that Jordan Love's better than Jalen Hurts, but it's
know.
not.
We don't
Exactly.
Can I push back on it? Because we had the narrative, and it wasn't narrative, it was statistical, that Jalen had this little dip. But Josh pulled this graphic, Jalen's last 10 games, and I was shocked by these numbers.
Oh, yeah, stop throwing
10-0.
Yeah.
28 points, 240 yards, 26 touchdowns, 3 picks with a passer rating of 115. I felt like the A.J. Brown needs the ball. We need to get better at passing. Like, last 10 games, I was undefeated, but his name still gets
because I
no
think
respect on
I
it.
think
Like,
it's
yeah,
less
I
than,
guess Jordan Love's better than me. Why? Because
No.
he won one playoff game?
No, so that's, by the way, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think some people would argue Jordan Love is better, but nobody could definitively make the case Jordan Love's better. You could more easily make the case Jalen Hurts is better. What I think, and Coach, tell me if you agree, if we put that graphic back up there, the thing people were picking at, you see total yards per game is at 238. I don't know this definitively, but I think the passing yards per game were just south of 200.
Yeah.
And so I think that...
Maybe not for the last 10 or just that
yeah,
little,
for the
that
last
little,
10, I think
that little
so.
Stretch.
And so, because I think he was averaging around 40 yards per game rushing. Again, give or take 5 yards in either direction. I think that's what it was. Nobody doubted the offense was working. That's the team points. But it was that they were, not throwing the football consistently down the field.
Well, I think there's real parallels between the two because Jalen Hurts, he gets the contract, then he has the interception issue. Then it started out, he had the interception issue. Then they reel him back in. And the numbers have been great in terms of touchdowns to interceptions. The passing numbers haven't been as great. But look what Green Bay's done. They've done the same thing with Jordan Love. They've pulled back the amount of attempts that they're taking each game because he's been somewhat problematic with the interceptions. The concern I have for Philly is just the layoff that Jalen Hurts has had and where he is coming off this concussion. To me, that's the great unknown going into this game and how badly will that affect his performance.
But this Philly team, to me, they are back to being the team that made the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They don't have as ferocious of a pass rush, but they do have an even better running game. And so, like, this was the way they made the Super Bowl when the team was awesome a couple years ago and ultimately lost to the Chiefs. And so, Philly since September has lost once. Their quarterback got knocked out early, and they lost on a last-second pass by coach's guy, Jaden.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do? I mean, he's been doing it people all year. But you know what I mean? That's their only loss since October 1st. Like, so I think that, with respect to the committee, to use their trademark, these teams are, to me, in two totally different tiers. Philly is in as high of a tier as any team in the league outside of the Chiefs. And Green Bay's, they're good. Yeah. And so I'd be very surprised if Green Bay went into Philly and won.
All-Pro revealed today. While Josh Allen is the Vegas favorite for MVP, Lamar was named first-team All-Pro QB. He got 30 votes to Josh's 18. Do you think this means Lamar could still win the MVP?
Yeah, I do. And I really think it comes down to the third to last week of the season. So the third to last week of the season, Baltimore's playing Pittsburgh. Lamar gets over the hump. He has a good game. They win convincingly. In that same week, Josh plays New England. They don't really win the game. New England just finds a way to lose the game.
Classic.
His numbers are terrible. His quarterback rating is terrible. And in that moment, right there, if you look at those two players, Lamar was already gaining momentum. Now, Josh is coming off the 8 straight games with 30-plus points per game. But now you go to that game, and in that moment, Lamar's getting over the hump, and Josh has this terrible game against a team that's, not very good. And I would imagine if you're a voter that was on the fence, you could easily swing to Lamar at that point.
So historically, these two things are directly correlated. If a quarterback wins MVP, it is the first-team All-Pro quarterback. So I would think that these odds are going to quickly shift, not necessarily to where Lamar is a favorite, but right now Lamar is a huge dog. Greg Rosenthal, who works for NFL, does a great podcast, NFL Daily. He tweeted out, like, he's convinced Lamar's winning MVP. I texted him, I was like, I think there is a chance there is some vote splitting here because of the word valuable. that some, because most of the AP voters are the MVP voters.
Yeah.
It's the same pool of people.
And it wasn't super close. Like 30-18 was not.
No, right. So but what I do wonder is, are some people going to say, Lamar had the best season, we're going to give him all pro. Josh was more valuable because of the valuable component of it. We're going to give him MVP. But can we talk about Lamar for a second here? Because this isn't speculation. He now is 3-time first-team All-Pro. Okay? That means that aside from Aaron Rodgers, take him out because we don't even know if he's playing, Lamar has more first-team All-Pros than the rest of the quarterbacks in the league put together. Patrick has 2. No one else has a single one. He now has as many first-team All-Pros as Tom Brady. He now joins this group where the only people who in NFL history have been first-team All-Pro quarterback more than him are Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning with an astounding 7. And this, I think it's actually kind of perfect because, as I've said the last few weeks, I will say again, the quarterback whose career Lamar reminds me of is Peyton Manning. And nobody makes the comp because black guy, white guy, statuesque pocket passer, the most athletic mobile quarterback we've ever seen, but a guy who year after year after year put up unbelievable regular seasons, and we'll see if it changes for Lamar. Peyton is who I'm talking about here. Every single year was a different guy come the postseason. And Peyton won Super Bowls despite that, but that is who he was throughout.
Well, I think the other parallel is Peyton had the New England problem, and now Lamar has the Kansas City problem. You know what I mean? Like they're so impressive, and Peyton was, look, his dealing with him was terrible.
Yep.
But he couldn't get past us, and it's a little bit of the same thing now for Baltimore. Is can they get past Kansas City, and even if they get past them once, right, can they get past them multiple times?
And so can I say one other thing about MVP? Because you seem like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you think Josh winning MVP would almost be like a participation trophy?
Not a participation trophy. This told me that the voters think that Lamar Jackson actually had the best year, but the Vegas odds tell me that they will probably give it to Josh, for lack of a better term, to be nice.
And I bet before the end of the show, there are some sports books that flip these odds and say Lamar's the favorite. Like, he'll help keep us posted on that. But here's where I will push back. Last year, Lamar Jackson, when he was the MVP, 49-1, and was first-team All-Pro, 45 first-place votes to 3 for Dak, 2 for Brock Purdy, was 15th in the NFL in passing yards, 11th in touchdowns, and 4th in passer rating. Very similar to what Josh is doing this year. So the path for Lamar winning the MVP last year is the exact path Josh is walking down this year. And there are some folks, hand up for me, that would find it incredibly odd for the exact same pool of voters last year to say Lamar is hands down the MVP over Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy, who I wouldn't have voted for, and then use the rationale that would have led you to vote for Dak or Purdy last year to now vote for Lamar again this year. Like, to me, the seasons, it should have either been Lamar last year and Josh this year, or Dak Purdy, pick one of them, the statistical amazing season last year, and Lamar this year. But it can't be that it's you're carrying a lesser cast, intangibles, winning record last season, and raw stats this year just so the same guy can win it both seasons.
Yeah, to me, he's got a Derrick Henry problem.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have the production that you have out of Derrick Henry, which is better per carry average than Saquon, and the effect that has on defenses versus what Josh is working with, it's hard to say, even though the numbers would lean towards Lamar, it's hard to say that Josh wasn't more valuable to his team.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.